Chapter 37. So, what is our next step? Cyan is the first to break the morning silence. No one knew how to respond to Rosner and the threat on his life from a goddess, so they all agreed to talk in the morning. We find our brother, Rosner says, almost forgetting Asra is present. He still cannot get over seeing her. Just like I have been doing since the beginning. The group sits in the same room Rosner abruptly left the day prior. Food sits in front of them, but they pay it little attention. In other words, we did this for nothing, Kanyu grumbles. He still glares at Sehean for putting the spell on him. Just before this, they caught the dwarf up on who Asra is and how she is involved. Asra mentions she is a dragon rider. He only scoffs, saying, "No such thing exists." As such, he also eyes her suspiciously. Any way to persuade Kanyu otherwise lies outside, so the group silently agrees to let the matter go until then. As I recall, Rosner snaps, we have uncovered things most pass off as legend, at best. I may not know where our brother is, but I am sure we will find him. Kanyu snorts, Aye, but those legends were not the goal. You have found nothing of your brother's whereabouts since the start. You are chasing the wind in a storm. You have no direction. Anger boils inside Rosner. His face flushes red. What is wrong with this dwarf? So what if they have not found what they are after? So they have no direction. Half the excitement is in the adventuring. And what is he complaining about anyhow? Would he rather be back at the Sea Haven? The Sea Haven. Now there is something he has not thought about in a while. This excursion was supposed to be short-lived. They were walking on thin ice as it is when they first left that sandy fortress. Especially Rosner. Isagra had a dislike for him. Rosner is convinced the moment she saw him. The fact that Tyriane was able to let them go at all was a miracle. He supposes the man, well, half-elf, is being reprimanded in some fashion for their otherwise unexplainable absence. But Rosner doubts, even with all their connections, that they will find him, or anyone else in the group. A stretch of silence passes through the room. No one wants to fall victim to either Rosner or Kanyu's harsh words, but by now, Rosner is calm, his thoughts slightly elsewhere, and Huon takes notice. Where do we start? He asks, looking at Rosner. I wish I knew. He hates to admit it, but he has no clue where to go from here. Kanyu shakes his head, obviously not satisfied with the answer. He also does not seem surprised by it. Sehean snorts. So long as it involves you removing yourselves from my land, I care not. Your arrival brought tension, and their altercation only made it worse. It would be a blessing to see your problems brought down on someone else. Huon looks at his sister, shocked at her harsh words. Asra looks at her too. The difference is in Asra's steel words that make the she-orc flinch a hair. I would not be so bold in your statements. While I do not foresee us spending much longer here, it is my belief that your involvement in this is far from over. So I think it may serve you to watch your tone in some manner. Sehean sneers. You may have that dragon, but this is still my land to rule. I will not be belittled while I stand on its soil. Asra and Sehean stare at each other. Years of living with Asra, and Rosner has not known her to apologize often, and this does not appear to be one of those rare moments. In fact, the way the two interact with each other seems off. Something tells him this tension goes beyond the current conversation. Kisra clears her throat. Everyone turns to her, but the tension lingers. She licks her lips, nervous. What if we just went back to where it all began? I heard that is usually a good place to start. Rosner is about to argue, but he finds himself quiet. It is the only suggestion they have. It is a long shot for sure, but they cannot be worse off than they are right now. Can they? They all break out into discussion, but it does not last long. Everyone quickly agrees Kisra has at least offered a place to begin, though Rosner does notice Kanyu does not seem as committed as the others. He knows they are losing him. The dwarf may not want to go back to the Sea Haven, but he also does not want to be following them. It just comes down to which one he despises more. The only thing Rosner disagrees with is Asra coming. The others do not say anything when Rosner denies her, but he knows they feel the same, though for arguably different reasons. The presence of a dragon still unnerves them, those that have been in her presence, that is. And to an extent, it does Rosner as well. She assures them Strongheart will keep her distance so as to not provoke suspicion, but they are not easily convinced. Asra, however, does get them to agree. When she has her mind made up, a goddess cannot hope to change it. So they set out late in the afternoon, with the dragon acting as a scout ahead of them. For a good portion of the day, Cyan carries the paralyzed dwarf atop her horse, which all were happily surprised by, after he freezes in Strongheart's presence. Up until then, he mumbles things like, Vairein and Mirain, hear me, or Bahayon, this cannot be, and several others. Though the one about the goddess of mysteries struck everyone odd, since most consider her dead or corrupted by a sander, if she even lives. Why Kanyu would pray to a potentially dead or evil goddess is anyone's guess. Rosner almost convinces himself the dwarf says it because he is in shock. Almost. As they travel and Kanyu continues his ramblings, Huan gives a brief history lesson to Rosner and the others, if they choose to listen. He tells them, though there are very few records that date back to before the dissension, a couple mention the birth of the gods, but those scripts are just copies of the original tellings of the gods and may not be overly accurate. Unfortunately, at this point, Huan's expression grows grim. The texts he has read have been copies of those copies. Nonetheless, there is a section that talks about the goddess of mysteries and the dwarven mother. The two are connected. All accounts say, in some fashion, that Vayen was the last to see her sister alive. Each text branches from there, creating their own theories based on different foundations. It does not make them feel any better about what Kanyu is saying, and when he finally gathers himself, he feigns any knowledge of his mutterings. He mounts his own mule and ignores any attempt at a conversation with him, especially when concerning Mirayin. Rosner falls slightly behind the dwarf and watches him for a minute. Maybe he is telling the truth. Maybe he does not remember his mutterings. These thoughts do not reassure Rosner. If anything, they make the situation stranger, unnerving. But he cannot do anything about it, so he trots on, following alongside Cyan while Asra leads. She and Huan, after he finishes his history lesson, take a few steps ahead of everyone and talk to themselves. Kisra keeps silent next to Kanyu. Every so often, Rosner catches her glancing back at him and Cyan. The second they make eye contact, she faces forward. Odd. As for Cyan and him, they keep quiet as well. Not due to any awkwardness. No. Cyan is on high alert, scanning the horizon ahead of and behind them. Rosner catches himself following her lead, and making sure their flanks are clear. But all he sees are trees, birds, and the occasional deer. At this point, most, if not all, the Amazonians know who Asra is, so their walk should be unhindered. But for Cyan, keeping watch is habit. For Rosner, well, he should make it a habit. After the first few days of travel, Rosner realizes the path they walk is eerily familiar. It does not take him much longer to recognize the stonework. They walk down the road of the ancients. He glances behind him, his mind buzzing with curiosity. Had the descendants left anything near the temple? Or is the road all there is left to remember them by? Rosner distinctly remembers Tyriane talking about the Amazonians in some relation to those from the first city, but he cannot remember what. The first few cycles are uneventful, save the rare group of scouts that have not had the pleasure to be in the presence of Asra and Strongheart. The presence of Strongheart. The parties encircle the group, only to fall prostrate at the dragon's arrival, begging for forgiveness. Through the Dwarpen forests, most of the same thing happens. Nothing. The only truly entertaining thing that occurs is when random groups of travelers warn them of a dragon up ahead. Most are shaken by the sight, but one group claims if they had the right equipment, they could take it on. Another group also attempts to rob them and give special attention to the women, as one graciously says. A couple of bandits are slain and the rest slip back into the shadows. Then, after traveling 1.25 cycles into Croane, they hear something interesting from a group of humans and half-elves heading south. "They say war is starting in the north," one says while the groups share a fire. "Oi," another says, "Boglov's finally slipped. He brings war against the elk. Minor skirmishes have been going on for at least a cycle. The elk is requesting extra swords," says a third. "Heard he even is requesting aid from the other regions." "So, why flee?" Cyan asks. The second looks at his party, then chuckles. "We are not fighting folk." From the opposite side of the fire, Huon says, "If there is any fighting to the north, that is over 3 cycles distance by horse, at best. Why still move south? Why move at all? If what you say is true, and they have been fighting for a cycle, that means you left without hesitation." The others exchange glances, some nervous, some ashamed. There are others among them, but only the 3 talk. Finally, the first one speaks up. "After hearing all the stories about Moglov's men hunting others for entertainment, when we heard whispers of war, actual war, not just his pesky raids, I knew I wanted to be far from it. Even if nothing comes of it, I would rather be far from him. I just had not had the courage to leave until now." The rest of the night grows rather quiet. Each group falls into their own thoughts, some fearful, others planning their next move. In the morning, the groups part ways in opposite directions. It is difficult for Rosner, but after talking with Asra, they agree it may be better to find out more about this war. The rest of their party is informed as such not long after the other group disappears behind them. Everyone takes to this new destination with grim face. They have questions, but they do not ask them. Instead, they stay silent, their eyes slowly drifting to the horizon and whatever dangers may await them. Rosner cannot help but feel bad and frustrated. Save Cyan, they are not fighters, and this, sure as the void, is not their fight. This is a journey for him and Asra, so why are they still here? This cannot possibly be better than the Sea Haven. Walk around aimlessly, eating what you can, Bathing when you find water over having actual meals and easy access to clean water? Something else is going on, he is sure of it. Rosner stares forward, determined. Whatever it is, he will get it out of them yet. After traveling for another cycle, the group begrudgingly agrees to spend the night in a small town in the middle of the plains. Kisra and Kanyu are warned, and Huan iterates they need supplies. Again. Cyan, though she agrees with the orc, dislikes the idea of the town visit. Rosner and Asra see the risk, but they see it as a chance to ask questions and hopefully find answers. Plenty of questions are asked, but the replies are discouraging. Not many know what is going on. A couple even seem surprised to hear news of war at all. There are, however, several warned travelers at the inn that Mulglov's forces are cutting through the Elks like they are nothing. Others argue that the Elk can hold Mulglov at bay. What do you think? Asra asks Rosner as they sit back down with the group. I think that none of them know anything, Rosner huffs. But it is better than not knowing about the war at all. How do you even know if there is a war at this point? Kisra asks. Rosner shrugs. There may not be war, he admits, but there is definitely tension. I would like to figure out why. What of your brother? Huon asks. He bites his tongue, letting Asra explain. I cannot readily say why, but I think we may find answers about our brother by following this war. Rosner thinks otherwise. It is only partially true. Rosner agrees with Asra, but he refuses to admit it. He wants to believe Kadoric is safe and far from the war, but he reminds himself the possibilities are low. He remembers Palfrey did not look overly hopeful when he took Kadoric. Then there is that strange vision he had when he was captive on the ship. Rosner shudders. So, what happens if we end up running face first into war? Cyan asks. Asra shrugs. I suppose we will figure it out if it comes to that. 2 days after a black night, the group wanders upon the Silver Mur, one of the two major rivers that flow into the Istray Sea. Here, they break from travel early, and Rosner and Asra go about their daily training. Usually it is Rosner Cyan, though, since their first near capture in the Dorpen forests, while in search of the Amazonians, the two were determined not to be caught unprepared again. But ever since the addition of Asra, Cyan has slowly distanced herself. On occasion, the three perform 2-on-1 maneuvers, but the swordswoman has been content with fighting air as of late. She is not the only one Rosner has concerns for. Kisra, while she does not avoid the group, keeps her distance from him as well. Asra and Rosner finish their sparring session, muscles hot from use, but not quite winded. His sister walks back to Huon and Kanyu. Rosner starts to follow, glancing over at Cyan as he does. Seeing her still practicing her form in the wavering light, he takes this opportunity to talk with Kisra. He walks towards her as she, sitting in self-isolation, overlooks the calm river. It may be in the middle of a Sturm's reign, but Croane is known for its mild weather when he wanders on the Mentis. The snow from the days previous has melted, leaving only small patches of white. I do not suppose you want to share your thoughts, Rosner says, coming up to her side. He sits on a rock beside her, his breath slightly ragged from the sparring. For a while she stays silent. Rosner is partially convinced she did not hear him approach. He rises to leave her in peace. What am I doing here? She asks aloud. It seems she speaks more to herself than Rosner, so he stands there a moment longer. Then she turns to face him, strain and confusion. and frustration on her face. All I do is either get in the way or make trouble for your lives. She pauses. Rosner opens his mouth to say something, though admittedly he's not sure what, when Kisra turns and stares back across the water. The far shore is barely visible across the wide expanse. Tyriane did not even want me. Rosner can hear tears start to build. He wanted me to come. He said the research he was doing I would not be able to help with. Then she turns wildly on Rosner. He is supposed to be my mentor. He is supposed to teach me. I am a scholar, Rosner. I know nothing of combat, of survival. Her gaze drops and her voice breaks. He used to want me. Unsure of how to respond, he eases back down. What she says is true, partially. While she has not caused any issues, there have been a couple instances where some situations took advantage of her innocence. He sighs, knowing he has to say something. As much as I find myself not liking it, he says, I think Tyriane is wiser than you give him credit. He saw not your faults, but experiences you were unfamiliar with, and sent you to perform them. Being forced to do something you are unfamiliar with tends to help you widen your understanding of other areas you find interest in. Like in the tavern. Kisra flashes her eyes at Rosner. He quiets. I told you. No, she states firmly. Then her gaze drifts to the others chatting idly by the fire. He sees Cyan has finally stopped for the night and frowns absently. He needs to talk with her as well. Rosner forces himself to smile and looks back at Kisra, finding himself momentarily stunned by her beauty. The fading light of Savona behind her casts an aura around her, magnifying the simple yet appealing features that are Kisra. He clears his throat to distract himself, and in turn gains her attention once more. I still do not fully understand why you do not trust them, Rosner says, adding more to himself, or why you trust me. He picks back up with, but I must admit my curiosity is getting the better of me. I have trained with the Sphinx. You know this. We have traveled together for over 3.5 years. So please, what happened that night? For a while, Rosner watches as an internal battle rages. At several points, she opens her mouth but pauses, rethinking either her decision or her words. Her expression hardens. Eventually, Kisra rests a hand on Rosner's and says, Perhaps when it is just the two of us. She rises and starts back to the others. Rosner is just about to argue otherwise when he spots a small figure approaching, half cast in shadow from the lingering light in the sky. What did you overhear? Rosner asks, maybe harsher than need be. The dwarf shrugs. Just that little bit about just the two of you. Listen, if you ever want privacy, what is it, can you? Rosner cuts in, not wanting the conversation. Just going over the plan to cross, the dwarf states, unfazed by Rosner avoiding his inference. Though you would want in. Rosner nods. They walk most of the way in silence. Then just before reaching the group, and Rosner knows the dwarf plans this to avoid a retort, Kanyu says, Still, figured you'd go for Cyan. They reach the ferry late in the morning. When they approach the ferryman, an older elf male, even for their standards, looks at them crossly. He tells them for the past several cycles, the only people he has been given passage to are those seeking to venture south. Almost all of them whisper of war and horrors in the north. he tells the group. The last group, not 4 days past, gave mention of a dragon. Ha! I kept to myself, but the imagination of some is quite entertaining. But the group does not laugh with him. Instead, Rosner and Asra share worried looks. Rosner hates to admit it, but Asra may have been right, though he can see she is not happy about it. In fact, she is almost fearful. So, Huon says, will you give us passage? The elf nods. Yeah, I suppose so. Hop in. From the ferry, they follow a well-worn path north. Sporadically, for the next couple of weeks, they encounter more and more individuals. Mostly elves, but some are humans. The rare showings of orc and dwarf also appear, heading south. Occasionally, these individuals call out to the group. You are heading the wrong way. Death and destruction await you. Turn around, lest you wish to meet death. More and more the calls come, weighing heavily on Rosner's shoulders. He notices Asra bears the same weight. The others are worried too, but their reasons likely differ from them. They all hear talk of war. Rosner and Asra hear their brother may be in trouble, or rather, Rosner shakes his head, refusing the conclusion he has drawn on. After setting camp far from the road, Rosner passes on sparring with Asra and instead approaches Cyan. From above, the eyes watch as they begin to wane. Focused on her form, she does not seem to notice Rosner approach. Then her sword is pressed against his neck. Trying to sneak up on me? She breathes, her gaze hard, focused. Rosner ultimately ignores the blade. No. The cool metal leaves his skin and hangs at Cyan's side. Good, she says. It would have been a poor attempt if you were. So, what is wrong? Asra tired of you? There is something hidden in the comment, but Rosner cannot figure out what. Actually, I told her I would break for the day, he tells her. Okay. She sheaths her sword and crosses her arms. So, what is wrong? How does he phrase this? She looks at him, waiting. He sighs. Since my sister showed up, you have been acting strange. She scoffs. Really? Strange how? Well, for one thing, you do not spar with me anymore. Isn't it not what your sister is for? Rosner shakes his head. She is fine, but better with a bow. I miss our bouts. Cyan's face hardens. I'm doing fine on my own. For some reason, Rosner is angry at this. Why is she being stubborn? You know it is not the same, he growls. What has made you mad? The swordswoman sneers. Mad? You know what? I know what is going on. You are afraid. He has no clue if this is true or not, but the woman is infuriating. She snorts. Afraid? Nothing frightens me. No? He says. You are afraid that I am a better swordsman. You fancy yourself some sort of entertainer? Cyan laughs bitterly. We both know who is better at the blade. Then prove it. Cyan stands there, shocked. Then, I need not prove myself to you, or anyone. Then I will assume I am right. Rosner pressures. This is not why he came over here, but that does not matter anymore. He just wanted to talk, but this woman hardly ever listens to words, only action. So he will give her something to bite. The swordswoman brings her sword up threateningly. Rosner bats it away with his forearm. Between the bracer and his hewn muscle, he barely feels it. You do not want this, she warns as she takes several steps back and finds a stance. I have nothing to prove, he calls back, finding his own stance. Their swords ring out. Neither one expresses an interest in talking, save that of the swords. Neither makes for any deadly strikes, just to pummel their opponent to the ground. The rage of both allows them to last long past most exchanges, leaving both by the end to be bruised, sweating, and breathless, but alive. We will count that as a tie, Rosner heaves. Cyan answers with a furious yell. He looks up as she throws her swords to the side and charges him. Full of shock and exhaustion, he stands there. She barrels into him, and they tumble to the ground, his sword lost in the mess. They brawl for a moment, but it does not last long. Cyan pins Rosner beneath her by sitting on his chest, her thighs keeping his arms to his sides. Laying there, Rosner sees a certain beauty in her fierceness, but it is quenched when she lowers her face just over his. Are we done? Instead of answering, the thought of him and Kisra the night before the ferry drifts back to him. Why are you here? He asks calmly. Caught off guard, she sits up and crosses her arms. What has that to do with anything? Rosner shrugs best he can. Kisra thinks she does not belong. Kanyu is only skilled in stealing and complaining about travel. Huan, well, I suppose reading minds is helpful, but I still do not understand why he is here. Without him, you would have never lived to find your sister, Cyan says bitterly. True, but what about you? She stares coolly at him. I need not explain myself. He stares back with a soft expression, but one full on intent. She sighs. He feels her body relax, her legs muscles loosen, and she sinks deeper into his chest. Like the others, I hate being cooped up, and I love to explore. You let me escape from one place and enjoy another. That is one of the reasons I took to being a sellsword. A playfully sarcastic comment lingers on Rosner's tongue. Something like, now, was that so hard? But it dies, leaving him with a small, genuine smile. She returns it. Then, as if their thoughts are in sync, the awkwardness of their position dawns on them. Their smiles disappear. Cyan swings herself off him and retrieves her swords. Rosner does the same. Anything else? She snaps, though the anger from before is no longer there. No. Rosner almost whispers it. Cyan nods and heads back to the camp. Watching her go, he cannot help but smile. She is nothing like Kisra, yet intriguing all the same, for very different reasons. The next afternoon, they all grow weary. Strongheart reports, through Astra, that elven scouts from a warband a day further north litter the land, and they are on course to cross paths with one of these scout groups. They keep course, knowing it is the only way to find out what is really going on. When they break for lunch the next day, someone crests a small hill in the distance. He pauses there and returns the way he came. Not long after they resume their journey, the elf returns with 8 others in tow. It seems to take much longer than it should, but eventually the 2 groups converge. One travel-worn and sore of feet, the other appearing as towers astride their mounts. One of them sits upon an elk, while the rest have war horses. Huon explains as they approach that only those of higher rank can mount such animals. The leader, a tall elf with a sharp poise, looks over his nose at them, his mount a half step in front of the rest. The others, in varying degrees, look at them likewise. Rosner does not see this meeting being pleasant. This land is under the rule of Prince Alistair, who himself answers only to the elk, he announces. His tone is flat, like he believes it is beneath him to talk to them. Traveling is ill-fated as of now, as travelers I see you be. What purpose be it yours to head such this way? Much to everyone's surprise, Sighing steps forward. Travelers be we, she replies in a similar manner, but as you have prepared, we fight as well. There has been tell of war in the north, and we seek to offer aid. A wry smile appears on the elf. Then he lets out a cool laugh. Wise as you may seem, you will do very little in such aid. Our forces will push back these foes. Those are not the stories we hear, Rosner says boldly. The elf regards him with a manner of disgust. Those are words of fear from those who understand little of battle. Now be on your way away from here until the prince deems otherwise. As he turns around, both Asra and Sahin start walking forward. The other elves block their path. The leader looks at the two women with annoyance. What, be it, are you doing? Asra nods ahead of her. Walking. In the direction to which I forbade you to wander, he notes. You can forbid all you want, Cyan says with little care, which angers the elf more. But our destination is still this way. If you go against me, you go against the prince. To go against the prince is to go against the elk, he growls, trying to remain in control of his anger. Try and stop us if you want, Asra says. One way or another, we will move forward. Only now does Rosner catch on to the fact that they are baiting him. If it comes to a fight, they will surely lose, but not without taking out at least 4 of them. If the scout party comes back later than before, a portion of the army's resources may be redirected to this altercation and away from the main force, ultimately weakening it. He knows it. Cyan and Asra know it. The ever-furious elf knows it. None of them want bloodshed, but they seem to be at an impasse. In order for them to continue, Rosner and the rest will have to succumb to being prisoners of sorts. More of a guarded escort. Very well, the elf growls. Confiscate their weapons. We hold them until we arrive, Cyan cuts in. You are in no position for negotiation. The elf practically spits in his fury, finally breaking his composure. Leave it to these two to anger someone who can kill us, Rosner notes. Then he remembers Strongheart. Well, maybe not kill. Nor are you, Asra retorts. Rosner can practically see the steam fume from the elf's head. After several tense seconds, he says, Fine. Then in Elvish, he barks a string of orders. The group forms up tightly around them. Some linger a short distance away. All of them bear their weapons on their outside hip. Rosner exchanges grim looks with Huan. Kanyu is furious with the situation, muttering a never-ending list of curses to himself, mixed with the occasional threat. Kisra looks as frightened as a cornered doe. And the other two, well, they appear satisfied with the arrangement. They start forward and move at a grueling pace.